Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride. Let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/217. You can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or call the voicemail hotline at 202-930-1109 and check Pedal Shift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 217th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining. Before we jump into the final session, the final edition of the 4x44 Gap Loop, we've got a little bit of housekeeping. You may be asking yourself, hey, Tim, it's the first Thursday of a month. I'm used to a best of at this time slot, in this time period, and you would be right. Ordinarily, I would do that, but we're going to make a little bit of a shift for the best of here in September for a couple of weeks. So that we can kind of wrap up this whole tour journal and keep it all in one nice big 4-episode arc, which is great. And then next week, I actually have a great interview coming up that's timely in nature, and it would make much more sense for it to be next Thursday. So if you're collecting the best ofs like a collector, I don't know, it's coming in a few weeks. But some great events that I talked about last episode that I want to make sure are on your calendar, or at least I want to make you aware of it. The 18th annual Film by Bike is happening virtually this year, September 10th through 13th. And as I mentioned last week, I've been wanting to check this out for years, but my Mays are never really quite right for me, and that's when it's normally held in Portland, and I could never get out there in time. Well, now that it's online and it's in September and I've already got my tickets. I'm super excited for it. Check it out at filmbybike.org, and next week, check out the podcast because I'm going to be chatting with Aileen Crotty all about the festival and the bike adventure goodness that is in this year's edition. Also, do not forget that friend of the show, Annalisa Vandenberg, is the organizer behind this Cycling With Summit. That is the following week, September 18th through 20th. It is an amazing lineup of speakers, including Pedal Shift friend Jasmine Reese. Go check it all out at milesofportraits.com/cycling-with. Day 4 of the 4x44 Gap Loop came too quickly, but it featured the ultimate payback for a day and a half of climbing, and that is the giant downhill to the finish line. Good morning from day 4 of 4 for the 4x44 Gap Loop. A good chilly morning. Unlike 2 days ago when I woke up when it was misty and almost Oregon coast-like, this morning it's just in, low to mid-60s. Enough of a chill in the air that it's sort of like, looking forward to putting pants on, which is not something I usually say in the summer months. But I'm all excited about the final day of the ride. I had a little bit less of a good sleep last night. I have a bag that contains ibuprofen and a few other things that I keep it separate in my sleep kit. One of the things that I keep in there is a sleep aid that I take and occasionally, and it was all wet in there and mashed up and weird, and I'm still trying to figure out how that was. The bag was in my sleep kit dry bag, well protected from everything. I'm still befuddled. The only thing I can think of is somehow at some point when I had it open, a drop of water got in there, or a drop of coffee perhaps yesterday morning. It was a mush of pharmaceuticals. So I was unable to take that. And so I had, according to my sleep tracker, 7 points less good sleep. I had a 100 the night before, and I had a 93 last night, and didn't get as much as I would have liked to have gotten. But it also did not count the time dozing in my hammock yesterday evening, so I'm going to say everything feels good. I actually feel quite good this morning. The sun is just sort of shining right down in a beautiful way on the whole space here. It's just really, really nice. A couple who was in Connellsville is also in this camp down below by the river. I have sort of decided, I guess ex post facto, after the fact, for you non-Latin speakers, I am among you. The only Latin I know is because of law school. But in any event, I
I just decided not to approach or interact with folks, not because I'm being, a loner or whatever, or a jerk or whatever. It's just one less thing to deal with, I'm not seeing a lot of masks amongst folks who are touring, which I think is fine if everybody's staying away from each other. When I would check in, I would put on my mask, of course, when I would interact with the folks who run the place. I just don't see anybody with masks in this area. And I'm hearing a lot of sneezing and coughing. I don't know if you can catch that. It's sneezing probably, which is not super indicative of COVID, but look, we're all getting a little more freaked out these days about this, aren't we? In any event, I did chosen not to do any interactions, which is my loss, I think, in when all is said and done, because I do like chatting with people in camp. The interesting thing is that camp is really spread apart. You'd have to make an actual effort to go talk to people, unless you were going to or from a restroom, which is kind of weird, unless it was after the fact, I guess. I don't know. Anyways. One thing that I think is kind of interesting is technology. I don't know if anybody else has run into this in campgrounds, but flashlights are now insane. They're bright as car headlamps, I think. And I think people's technique is not great sometimes. All last night as the campsite next to me was setting up, I kept getting blasted by their flashlights, or if you're in England, torches. And it felt like I was getting torched. It's just really interesting because it just was really disruptive to my enjoyment in my camp while they were setting up. I always learned when I was in a campground situation that you always are very mindful of where you throw your beam, and that it should always be pointed down largely, but I'm not seeing a lot of that technique happening these days. I don't know, little campsite etiquette for folks, perhaps, if that's new to you, that as much as you can, especially now. Whew, man, it's like getting blasted in the face. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else exciting. Breakfast this morning is Bagels, which I'll put into quotes, what passes for bagels from a Martin's. When I know that it's not going to be a great bagel, I will go for your cinnamon raisin or something like that, which ordinarily I would not do, but I've got that, and I've got a thing of cream cheese, which I'm intending to eat a lot of this morning because, frankly, no refrigeration since last night, since my ice went away. Means that, it's not going to last forever. So I'm going to be eating a big breakfast of that. And I'll have the bagels, and I do have peanut butter for lunch. I got an entire bag of them. I think that'll work out great for my nutrition, quote unquote, or at least my calories. I've got 20 miles of riding up the hill that continues, and that after that point, it'll be about 20 miles of downhill. That'll get me to about roughly 4 miles outside of Cumberland is when it kind of flattens out. I'm feeling, yesterday took a lot more out of me than I think I realized. First of all, flat out fell asleep in the hammock last night. Second of all, just I'm feeling not crampy, but after 3 days of 44 miles each, feeling it in the legs a little bit. So I think it'll be good to have a little bit more of a relaxing day. I think that there is a huge difference, and file this under of having opportunities to coast versus not coast. So yesterday was all completely uphill with very few exceptions. There's a couple of, parts where as you're approaching a town or whatever, when I was able to coast, but for the most part, it's full day of spinning up a hill. Not a big hill, not very high percentage grade by any stretch of the imagination. Do not misunderstand me on that. But it is just that constant grind up a hill that I think does make a big difference, plus the heat, plus everything else. So I got 20 more miles of that, but I'm fresh this morning, and I think that's a big difference. Hopefully we'll also be able to get up there before things get too terribly hot. One thing I will note is that in the not too distant future, from a riding perspective, the trees go away right after Myersdale, which is about 12 miles, if memory serves. And so then it's very full sun exposure, which, as you all know, as you love hearing me say, I do not like. So I'll be all sun shaded up, and I'll have my neck gaiter on just to minimize the amount of sun that I get. But I'm looking forward to it. And also it's a Monday, so I think, more limited folks on the trail. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Seeing a crew go by that very much looks like a bed and breakfast type of group. They've got stuff on their bikes, but not a lot. And there is a B&B here in town, not far from the campsite, and they look all chipper and stuff, so good for them. All right. Yeah, I probably will be out of here. Oh, by the way, one more shout out to Rockwood. If you come to Rockwood, and regardless of where you stay in this town, the train tracks literally are on top of you, it feels like, and the trains are constant and they're all night long, as you can hear. I really recommend earplugs. I'll say it again. I recommend earplugs. I just recommend earplugs. And let's see, which train is this? It's another CSX. If you're a train for... Oh, no, I take that back. That appears to be... That is the Amtrak? Interesting. That's a test Amtrak. It's a very short car. Really interesting. I wonder what they're doing. In any event, if you are into trains at all, this is an amazing town to come to for this kind of stuff. I am sort of halfway into trains. My uncle was very deep into trains, continues to be to this day. So, in any event, that's it for the morning. Next stop will probably be Meyersdale. Just outside of Meyersdale, south, well, I don't know what direction I am. I got bike touring brain, kids. If you don't know the manifestation of bike touring brain, you just sort of days go by, you don't remember little details. It's the funniest thing. It's the point, and I guess it comes around day 4 for me, where it's just sort of like everything sort of, you don't remember what day you did what, when. It's particularly acute when you're going in one direction. On a loop, it's extra disconcerting because you're sort of like, I totally recognize this. This definitely happened. This was day 1 for me. I'm about to cross the longest bridge on, I believe, the entire gap. This goes over, I believe it's I-68. It goes over the Castleman River. It goes over the train tracks. In the distance, there is a beautiful array of wind turbines, and they're just kind of like flitting away in the haze today as it starts to heat up. I can't remember if I took you across this bridge on day 1, so we're going to do it here on day 4. I'm at the end of the bridge. That's on the Pittsburgh side of the bridge. We're going to be going towards the Cumberland side of the bridge. And just eyeballing it, it's probably, I don't know, maybe a half mile long. It's pretty long. I think I may have said that it was a mile long on another section of the tour journal, but here we go. Just before I hit record, you could hear cows. There's a farm, a working farm over on one side, pretty good sized one. That's to my left right now. And they're growing, it appears to be corn. It looks like corn, and an enormous amount of it. So I don't know if that's probably industrial feed corn rather than good old Eaton corn. And to my right, it looks like an area that the forest is starting to reclaim a little bit. If you are afraid of heights, I would recommend you just keep your eyes on the very wide trail. This is a very sturdy bridge, but it is going over a whole bunch of stuff. So, and I'm going super slow here just to sort of describe it as we go along here. It's such a picturesque valley, particularly with the corn to the left. And as I start to come a little bit closer, I'll get up on the saddle here a bit. Now we're over the Castleman River. And I would not know it but for the sign that I'm about to come across, which I'm pretty sure it's the Castleman. Again, bike touring brain. Yes, this is the Castleman River. In fact, I think this is the last I will see of it, which is kind of sad because it was such a great companion for this trip. It's such a great piece of riding this really tremendous trail. All right, so we will keep going. Now that we bid adieu to the Castleman, a fine companion. Now we get to a bit more civilization. Here's, I believe it's I-68. Trail's very empty today for a Monday, and the roads are too. For an interstate, I'm only seeing one car. I'll probably pick that up. Nice big pickup truck. And here we are. Okay, we're on the far side. Now we get to go over the train tracks. Oh man, did I hear a lot of trains last night. You heard a few in this morning's edition. No trains at the moment. Don't know if it's the same line. I would think it probably is. And as we go over the train tracks, now we're on this last section here, which is again over another piece of farmland that looks like it's laying fallow, taking a break this year. Canadian geese that flew about 20 feet from my head right there. I hope you could hear all that. It's quite the soundscape up here as well. This is one of the more stunning parts of this portion of the trail, I have to say. Just wide open, so much to take in. And far too often I'm, just trying to, especially coming from the other direction, I've got so much speed and so much momentum, I blow right by it. So it's kind of nice to see it at a little bit slower pace. Well, anyways, I'm sure this bridge has a name. I don't happen to know what it is, but it is kind of a fun element to the gap as we get here to the other side, and we're not far away from Meyersdale. Meyersdale, PA. I'm leaving right now. I just ate a metric F-ton of bagels and cream cheese, which reminds me of one of my favorite movies, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which I will note I saw in the theater. I was one of the 4 people that saw it in the theater. One of my favorite lines, and I think most people's favorite line is, Scott tells, the woman of his affection says,
"It's actually a really good garlic bread. Garlic bread is my favorite food. I could honestly eat it for every meal, or just eat it all the time without even stopping."
You get fat.
No, why would I get fat?
Bread makes you fat.
Bread makes you fat?
That's how I feel right now. I am a mere, I believe, 7 to 8 miles away from the Continental Divide, Eastern style, i.e. smaller. And I am very full. I am also very watered up. Turns out I needed 1 bottle of water to get up there, and there was actually another spot where there was water maybe about 6 miles back, so another opportunity for on-trail water. I don't know if I've just missed these or if they've been put in since I have been riding the gap, but I'm noticing more on-trail water in this part. Now, one thing I will hesitate to note is if you're doing Cumberland up, the first water that you've got a chance at is in Frostburg. So that is 11 or 15? I think it's 15 miles in. So you're going to want to make double sure that you got plenty of water coming out of Cumberland, because you'll go through it on a hot day real quick. So, and then from Frostburg, you don't really hit water of note until here in Meyersdale. So, in your first 32 miles, it's spaced out nicely, but you do need to be prepared for water on especially hot days, really any day. I mean, you're going to go through a lot of water that direction. Now, this direction, look, you're going to be doing a good chunk of it downhill, so maybe your water needs aren't as high. I would be stunned if I end up going through all 3 of these water bottles, unless today is a particular scotcha. So, let's see. Not much more to report from beautiful Meyersdale. One of these days I may check out that campground there. Although, I think that I toyed with it yesterday, but 44 miles was definitely the end of my road. Not just because it sticks with the thematic awesomeness of the 4x44 loop, but I was kind of cooked yesterday. So I think any additional miles would have been too tough. I am still in the interesting headspace right now of my day is going to end long before my ride is available. So I'm going to get to know Cumberland, Maryland, I think, a little bit better, or I'm going to really start to slow it down and maybe enjoy things like the Big Savage Tunnel, Maybe hang out a little bit in some of the benches where there's some shade and just really soak in the trail. The one nice thing about taking a vacation day and not having to check email is it's a vacation day and you don't have to check email. And I'm going to take full advantage of that. And I don't know when the next time is that I'm going to be coming up this direction. It might be in the fall, it might not be till next year, who knows. So I think soaking up what I can and enjoying it is the way to go. But really, I don't think I need coronavirus or 2020 or any year to tell me that. You should soak it all in every time. All right, off we go. Eastern Continental Divide behind me. Rushing air making for bad audio. Maybe. And off the paved, now back onto the trail. That was maybe one of my best 20 miles I've ever done on the Gap. On that incline, conditions were warmed, hot, very sunny. Normally not my best, but I'll tell you what, powered by Bagel apparently. That was very nice. And now I gotta upshift a bit. But I think I'm gonna largely take it easy today. I'm not gonna glide the whole way down because that would be too slow. But we got a couple of tunnels coming up of note, which we've already ridden through. And, a couple of great vistas that I think I'm going to take advantage of for the first time in a long time. So, want to savor the last 24-ish miles of this ride. On the opposite side of, or maybe I should say the Cumberland side of the Big Savage Tunnel, man, it was 20 degrees cooler in there, minimum. And for the first time in a long time, I'm taking advantage of these benches, even though I'm roasting out here. I'm covered almost completely head to toe in fabric to stop the sun from scorching me. But unusually busy, I think, for a Monday. So I don't know. I think I'm starting to lean towards COVID has not put too much of a dent in things. A lot of folks who are riding with panniers and whatnot. So that's pretty cool. But, it's not so crowded that you can't feel safe when you're out here, which is, of course, the number one thing. Interesting guy riding up with a bob trailer on more of a road bike. Certainly a way you can do it. But that was probably a rough 25 miles that he just did. Or actually, he's only about 19 now. But in any event, the rest stop up here is really kind of nice. They've got a place to put your bikes, lean up against. Not the wheel taco style either. They're actually reasonably decent. And there's a restroom over there and a bike fitting station. Or not a bike fitting, but a bike repair station, which is always nice to have, especially way out here when there's really not much else that you can get in terms of services. Closest bike shop to here is, well, maybe Myersdale on the other side. Let's see where we at. It's probably, there used to be one in Frostburg, and I'm not sure if it has returned, but of course that's a bit of a haul to get to up the switchback, so depending on what's going on. You may recall my early struggles with the Great Allegheny Passage, where I was just absolutely cursed, and of course I had the tire blowout that one trip. Actually, I've gone over that bridge a few times on this trip, and I always have bad memories of that gunshot sound of my tire essentially exploding, and then having to push it all the way up until I went with my zip tie trick and rode on the rims like a fool. But it ended up working. I am much happier with these tires, which have stood up to quite a bit of abuse and quite a bit of flat-free riding, which is always a nice thing to have on any kind of a bike tour. That's why I go with my Schwalbe Marathons for life. Probably will not stay up here very long at this spot. It's just too much direct sun, and there is no sense that it's going to get any better. But it is really nice and tranquil. The wind turbines are kind of cool to see rotating around here. And the valley is just stunning. I mean, the East Coast mountains don't have anything on the Rockies or the West Coast for kind of grandeur by any stretch of the imagination, but they've got these layers that I always particularly like. I don't know how to describe it. Of course, the photos never do it justice. Your eyes are always so much better than even the best possible piece of photographic equipment you could have, and of course all I have is my phone. But it is really great that this is a prime example of a place that you can only come to if you walk or bike. And this vista is not available by four wheels. Now, that's an accessibility issue, and I don't want to forget that for folks who don't have the capability of riding or walking. But for those of us who do, that does make this a special vista. All right. I think I'm going to keep heading down the mountain, maybe take another couple of stops. I, of course, got the state line up here, the Mason-Dixon line. And I usually like to stop there, and it's all downhill from here, as they say. At the Mason-Dixon line, aka the Pennsylvania-Maryland state line, they do a nice job here. When you're on a bike tour, I don't know if maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I always love it when I cross state lines. I like doing it when I'm in a car. I live near state lines. I live near several state lines where I live, and it's still still a joy to cross state lines. I guess where I grew up, there was no state line within an hour's drive. In fact, it was an international border that was an hour away. It was about an hour and maybe 20 minutes to Pennsylvania from where I grew up. So crossing state lines or crossing international lines, always a big deal. Here on the Great Allegheny Passage, they play it up. They play it up in a big way. They've got the actual state line in brick, and they've got a big whole set of Mason-Dixon laid out in big, beautiful granite stone blocks, and then a pillar that shows the distinction between where the Maryland side and the Pennsylvania side, and indeed the two counties that are representative. On the Pennsylvania side, I'm going to have to remind myself of this. Maryland side is Calvert County. On the Pennsylvania side, it is it Penn County? Looks like it's Penn County. I did not know that. I would have said it was something else, but Penn County it looks like. So kind of fun, kind of cool. A nice landmark. It's especially nice when you're coming up the hill because it gives you a place to stop and relax. That's a good solid break after quite a bit of climbing. They space things out really nicely on this trail when you're coming from the Cumberland side. When you're coming from the other side, man, you gotta squeeze on those brakes. It feels like you're stopping every few minutes because we just got done with the tunnel and now we're back down to here, and then we got Frostburg in a little bit. So yeah, you need to be mindful. Otherwise, your day is going to be over much sooner than you would like. And that is sort of where I'm at right now. It's like I've got the last, 19 or so miles of this trail, and I don't want it to end. But all bike tours, they must end at some point. Unless you're one of those incredible people who are on kind of perma bike tour, but that's not my jam these days. All right, let's keep rolling. From about mile marker 13 or so, you may tell by the wind I'm bombing down the hill. I originally was thinking about stopping at the Frostburg rest area, but I don't know. I did that on the way up. And although, this is the part of the trail that's just going to zip on by because there's not a lot to stop at. Not a ton of sites. There are a few. I was like, you know what? It's time. And coasting down this hill is such an earned joy that it's hard to pass it up. And, for those that are very pro Pittsburgh to Cumberland, this is their number one argument, and there is no counter to that. It's just such a fun little ride, and it's not just a little ride, it's just the joy as I pass here's mile marker 13. Goodbye 13. You've got the rail tracks to your right as you're coming down the hill, and
some areas of shade, some areas that's open sun. Trail surface is variable because it's variable. It's just it's a lot of fun. It's the type of ride that I think most people would find just delightful, no matter what their experience or background is. There are folks, I understand, I believe you can do this, take your bikes up on the train when it's running and then just roll right down, which is pretty cool. I believe also you can stop. There's a midway point not far from here where you can also stop and enjoy a little bit. I talked about accessibility before, and of course this train line gives certainly not up to the vista that I was talking about, but for folks who are unable to walk or ride up, they've got that as an option too. So, I appreciate that that's an option for folks. I certainly have some folks in my family who just don't have the physical capabilities to get up to some of the places that I'm able to. So I appreciate that these are options that are available for folks. It's also, as the numbers rapidly decline, I started at mile marker 44 and I'm fresh as a daisy. It's crazy how little effort on this final leg that this takes. I almost regret I ate too much. How many bagels did I have again? I'm not sure if I earned them, but perhaps the day 3 was the day I maybe retroactively earned them. But this is such a great way to sort of end the trip. The only bummer is that the downhill ends before the end of it, and you do have to actually cycle for a few more miles to get back into Cumberland. But what a great trip! I've just so enjoyed every element of it. The Gap is just such a good trail, whether you're a beginner. I think it's a great beginner trail for those of you who are looking for a first bike touring adventure. Boy, I tell you, you could do a whole heck of a lot worse than this one. But also just, if you've done a few of them, or if you've done the Gap multiple times, there's always something fun, there's always something new, always a new lesson to learn. I appreciate that about this trail, perhaps as much as any other out there. Careful when you're crossing streets, of course. There's also a few points on this trail where you're crossing tracks, and lesson learned on at least a couple of occasions: take it at a 90-degree, slow way down, because you know what? It's real easy to get caught in those tracks. I think there's actually a point coming up, so I will bid you adieu for at least one more time before we get to Cumberland, so I don't take a header on the tracks, eh? From Cumberland, Maryland, we are in the final mile of the Great Allegheny Passage, or the first mile, depending on which way you're thinking. But it is the 44th mile of the 4th day, which means we are at the end of the tour. Coming through the old industrial area by the train tracks and the pipelines and what Cumberland used to be, and maybe still is to a certain degree. And seeing the skyline, which is essentially, I think, a church steeple. If not, apologies to the steeple, or whatever structure you would call that. But thoughts? Well, I think I've been pretty clear. I have really enjoyed revisiting the Great Allegheny Passage this way. I think doing it as a loop for the first time was really exceeding my expectations, because it was so nice to be able to do that big hill in both directions. Normally, I am doing it in just one, and it feels like that when you can climb it one way and coast down it the other, that feels about as earned as you can get. And boy, did I bomb down that hill. I don't think I stopped more than once. Certainly not since Frostburg. So here we are. I'm actually pedaling through these last, we'll say 2 miles is what it was, and finding the spots that I found on that Friday morning that started things off here by the train tracks. I think I'm going to be going by the picture that I shared on Instagram. It was hashtag class of COVID-19, which is funny and sad at the same time. Yeah, here we go. We're coming by it here. And I'm going to cycle with you all the way back to the beginning and also to the end. Here we go. Yeah, still there. Class of COVID-19. Interestingly, I think this is also where some folks who want to hop freight trains go, because there was some freight train hopper style graffiti. I think the freight trains go pretty slow through here. That's a good spot to grab one. If you're into such things, I'm going to leave that to other people because it's freaking dangerous and it's illegal, but it's fascinating. That is for maybe Earth 3 Tim to accomplish someday. Lots of yellow lines on the pavement here where the roots are popping up. Now it's a little smoother. And we get to go through one last bridge, it looks like, if memory serves. There's a sign for the mile marker 0 sign. And we are crossing what I think is the South Fork of the Potomac River right now. So my kind of home river. Crossing tracks for the last time. 90-degree angle, everybody. I always do that. And yeah, going down here, getting ready to cross the one road. Always a bit of an adventure here. And we're across and approaching the back of the newspaper building. Cumberland Times News, right here. As we pass by the visitor center and wrap it all up here. What a ride. Mile marker 0. Thank you all for joining this great adventure, the 4x44 gap loop. Finny.
Statistics. Miles biked 44, go orange. Bagels eaten like 6.
Bread makes you fat.
Food resupplies 0. Rattlesnakes 0. Big ass hills 1. Flats 0. And as always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedal Shift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedal Shift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community, expanding into live shows and covering new tours like the Kessel Run. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot and annual options. If you're not into the small monthly thing, check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lean, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Didis, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Harry Telgadas, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Stuart Buchan, Mr. T, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Joseph Quinn, Byron Patterson, Joachim Robber, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Henkel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Aviles Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Dan Gebhardt, Jody Zeranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Biggle, Greg Middlemas, Connie Moore, William Goffman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Latois Lopez, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, John Funk, Tom Bilch, Ronald Piroli, Dave Roll, Brian Hafner, Misha LeBlanc, Ari Messinger, David Grotke, Wally Estrella, Sue Reinert, John Letko, Stephen Granada, Philip Mueller, Robert Lackey, Dominic Carroll, Jackie McCulloch, John Hickman, Jack Smith, Carl Presso, David Neves, Patty Louise, Terry Fitzgerald, Peter Steinmetz, Timothy Fitzpatrick, Dave Fletcher, James Stratakis, David Neves, Mike Lazewski, and thanks also to all past and anonymous members for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.